Jack, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and being willing to share more about your story. For you, I know that starts in your younger years and in high school with some of the things that you value that ultimately lead you down a darker path and getting involved in some of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. So if you wouldn't mind sharing on that, I'll pass it over to you now.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I guess my childhood, like I was really blessed. I had a really good family. My family was pretty wealthy, so I guess materialistic. I had no lack, if that's the best of words. I had no lack in that area. But since there was like some things in my family dynamic that really left me brokenhearted and left me asking why, I started to search for other means. So at a young age, about 13 years old, just because I was really into the rap scene, I really loved rap music. Like rap music was like one of the things that I believe that helped me get through my childhood. Because as I was dealing with all these problems, I would write music, and little did I know that's like a form of therapy that they use, like writing down your emotions. But I was writing it down with poetry, so I didn't know that I was doing something that was like therapeutic in a sense, and a way of getting rid and outletting my emotions. So I was really really big into music, and sadly the influences of music back then. I had NWA, Biggie Smalls, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa, Kendrick Lamar, like all of these guys, and they're all phenomenal artists, but they all came from I guess, broken homes. They all came from like really sad upbringings. They all had challenges themselves that they needed to face, and they started to rap about that. And it started, just by conveying a story. But then later on, as money came in, they started rapping about getting girls, drug dealing, all this stuff. And then that was starting to influence my life. And then therefore, I started to try and pursue that lifestyle because I was like, I want to be a rapper. These are how rappers are living. So I best to do the same that they're doing. So I started drug dealing about 13 years old. I was in a very like rich school or privileged school, so no one could really get a hold of that stuff. So I was able to buy it, sell it to them, and I was selling stuff at school. And I was telling my parents I was selling caps, so that's how I was making my money. And yeah, then I again like that lifestyle of needing to have validation of like, having I guess to achieve to lose your virginity and to try and acquire an account. That's what was the word back then. Like the highest tally that you have makes you more of a man, which is such a lie, but that's what I got sucked into as a young age. So from 13, I was just trying to get that tally, to get that count. So I was sexually active at 13 years old, really diving into it. And when I look at photos of me when I'm 13, I look so innocent. I'm like, I couldn't imagine that I like was doing all of that at such a young age. So yeah, it was really, really mind blowing. And yeah, then drinking came into it, and then drugs. So as I was doing drugs myself as well as selling it, and yeah, that just kept getting worse and worse as my teenage years went on. But yeah, that's how I pretty much fundamentally started. I was pretty much 13 years old, just mainly from influences of music and also my friends, because I had a lot of older friends, and all of them would go partying, doing drugs, getting girls, and it was all about when I look back on it now, it's all about the story, about telling a story, like, going to your friends and telling them this really grand story about how many things of cool things, quote unquote cool things that you did. And that's really what like sucked me in. It was almost storytelling, telling people a story about the bad things that we were doing, and then making it like glorifying it and making it cool. And then again, that's just the same as rap as well. Like, it's just a story and glorifying yourself or glorifying the horrible things that you're doing. So that's where it kind of stirred me up as a young age. And also having not the best environment, even though my parents were very wealthy and successful and very loving in the best way they could be, they still had some things that they were dealing with. And I was around a mum that was alcoholic. She would get drunk for weeks on end, and my dad was suffering from throat cancer. So he was always, telling me he was going to die, and that really damaged me as a young kid. Hearing your dad from, I think it started when I was about 13, would always tell me, I'm going to pass away soon. So, spend as much time as you can with me. And that psychologically did a lot of damage to me without knowing at the time, but it was just really, really damaging. And then seeing my mum go through these episodes of drinking, I knew it wasn't my mum, and I knew it wasn't, her fault, but I knew that there was just this thing that it seemed in my heart was more important than me. And that led a lot of emotional damage in my heart. And then seeing her abuse us and verbally abuse us, and do these things that she never would normally do, because it was like she was a different person. And we used to call her by a different name just so we could I guess, separate the two personas that she would, because she would change completely when she was drunk. And my dad used to make jokes and say, an alien ship would come and suck mum up and drop down a different person. And so I was really damaged in the sense of that. And then my brother on my dad's side, he passed away the same year that I met him, because he was separated from the family, and I was 12 years old, and he just came back into my life, and he was like, we're reconciling a relationship. We're like, we're going to be brothers. And he's like, I'm going to be your big brother. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I've got a brother. Like, oh yeah, that sounds so awesome. I was so excited. And then that year he got hit by a car from an alcohol related incident where he got so drunk, he passed out on the road and got hit by a car. So that really, again, I didn't know how to feel, because it was a person that I didn't know, but yet it was a person that I wanted to love and had a connection with, and was just about to build something together. So that, again, that left this thing in my heart, just going like, again, ow, like, why is this happening? How's this happening? Like, is there escaping from this environment? Is there escape from, I guess, what's happening to me? And then my brother on my mum's side, he was sadly dealing with addiction as well, and he was shooting up, and he would steal things from me and go sell them so he could support his addiction. And I think I was probably about 15, 16, and he offered me to shoot up with him, and then I was like, no, I'm all good, man. He's like, oh yeah, true, it's all good. Like, so like there was these things that were in my life, I guess, that came to play that were influencing me, but at the end of the day, I had the choice, and I was making the wrong choices to dive into those lifestyles. And seeing my mum drink, I was drinking. Seeing people do drugs, I was doing drugs. Seeing people party, I was partying, because I thought it was the cool thing and the right thing to do. And I didn't really think about the consequences of what would come after those, on doing those things. I just cared about the story and how cool it made me look, and wanting to be, I guess, portraying an image to people of who I was, and covering up the pain that I was dealing with in my upbringing. So, yeah, I guess that's like my upbringing, and I guess the reasons where I led to the way I went, and where I went to go in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, firstly, I want to offer my compassion to you. You've been through a lot, especially as a young kid. I mean, that must have been incredibly challenging for you. So thanks for your vulnerability. And I can see how all of those things kind of play a role in you deciding to follow after these worldly pleasures, because you're trying to fill this hole within your heart, like we all are. So yeah, maybe you could kind of speak a little bit to that. So all of that happened to you at a pretty young age, and then as you were finishing up in high school, what kind of direction did you want to go in? What sort of things were you pursuing? And how did all that sort of trauma play out in your life?
Yeah, yeah. So when I finished school, I had, I guess, opportunities to either go and get a trade and just do like a 9 to 5 kind of thing, or I had these burning desires to do my creative side. I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a comedian, I wanted to be a motivational speaker, I wanted to be a rapper. So there was these two little battles going on. Like, what do I do? Do I be stable and smart and save up and get a house and do all the things that we're meant to do, or do I take a risk and go pursue my creative side? And at the time, I had just been boxing. I'd been doing Muay Thai, so I'd like done this whole, I guess, fighting experience. And when I was about 16 years old, I took a whole bunch of LSD and MDMA and speed, and I did like a whole concoction of drugs. And I was meant to get on an airplane the day before, the next day. And I was like, oh, this will be fine. I'll just do a bunch of this stuff, and I'll be all good. But I ended up having a drug overdose and tripping out and just leaving my body. I had an out of body experience. I was watching myself on the ground, like just completely do my own thing, but I was out of my body, and I was watching my life play out. So I was watching scenes of my life, and I guess the opportunities that I could take, and what path I wanted to go. And I'd see myself die and then come back and die and come back. I ended up getting bashed by the cops. 6 cops ended up like completely physically abusing me, like just grabbing batons and smacking me because I was resisting arrest because I didn't know where I was. And I ended up going to court, and yeah, I had all these cuts all over me. And then I ended up getting better and going to Thailand. and just like, I guess, pursuing my fighting career and trying to look at my life. And from there, I think I made a moment in my heart where I was like, man, I want to get away from this lifestyle that I'm living, doing the drugs, partying, getting with the girls. Like, I want to try and escape this and try and just make something of myself, because I kind of had that moment where I died, but I didn't die. And I looked at my life and I realized that my spirit was different from my flesh. So I had a knowing of God at this point where I was like, wow, okay, my spirit is real. There's something more to this world. There's something past this world. There's something that's going to come, and there's greater things than this realm. So that's when I wanted to try and separate myself. So when I was making that decision of which path do I take, I decided to go, no, I want to pursue my creativity. I want to pursue these roles of acting and producing and doing all these things. So I ended up going to Gold Coast. I moved from Sunshine Coast, moved away from my friends at the time, and I wanted to try and pursue this acting, this rapping, this production, this motivational speaking. I wanted to pursue all that. So I did that, but the problem is when you try and run away from your problems, you still gravitate towards the same company. So it didn't matter that I changed location. I still had the same morals, same values, and still wanted to associate around the same people. So in acting school, we were around a bunch of actors who were, young kids that were trying to aspire the same thing, but they all had the same, I guess, values of wanting to go party, do drugs, have sex. And it's like, so I fell into the same habits, but worse this time, because now I was partying, because in Gold Coast, the nightlife's a bit more than Sunshine Coast, because Sunshine Coast is, was a sleepy town. It's starting to build up now, but so Gold Coast, we were partying from, I think it was Thursday to Sunday every week. I think sometimes it would even be Wednesday. I can't remember. I think it was Wednesday to Sunday, but we were partying like almost every night. And because one of our friends worked as like a nightclub crawl, he'd get us tickets and give it to us for like $10. So we'd get into every nightclub for $10. And yeah, it was just really, really bad. So even though I was pursuing these, I guess, these creative passions in my heart, they were still, I was still addicted to the same things, and I was still running for the same vices. So yeah, I was trying to live a different life, but I really couldn't, because sin in me was just controlling, and I was a slave to it. I always wanted to do it, so I was still running to the same vices, and things were getting worse. I would smoke weed quite frequently at this point, and then I would also be sleeping around a lot at this point, because the lifestyle was more, I guess, out nightlife. So then I was able to try and to, I guess, progress in that area in those ways. So I wasn't really changing as much as I wanted to in my heart. I couldn't. So I could continue to try and chase my acting and rapping and producing and all these creative things in my heart. And I guess that's when I realized the deep passion I had for rap, because I had a moment where I had stand-up comedy competition, an acting competition, and a rapping competition. And I put the most attention and the most, I guess, concentration into the rapping. And that's what kind of made me stop, I guess, veering away from the other ones as much, and to start to try and pursue rapping more so. So it was around, I think, 2019, 2020 that I started to make a decision to be like, I'm going to try and just become a rapper with all my heart. Because there was a moment when I was 13 years old, and the way I found rap was funny, I guess, scenes of events was I was my parents lived in this house, and it was full of mold. It was completely full of mold. So I was sick almost every day through all of grade 8. So I was suffering with these horrible sicknesses. My mates would come over, they would get sick. They didn't want to come over to my house just because it was full of mold. And I believe I ended up getting some sort of mold poisoning from it, just because of how extreme it was. And I was consistently sick. So my parents tried to take me out and put me near the beach, get some fresh air, and get me away from this mold, because I was getting so sick all the time, and I had to go get a surgery and get my adenoids out. So I went to the skate park, and I was, skating, and I tried to make friends, and these guys were ended up smoking weed. So they invited me back to their house, and they put on Notorious B.I.G. the movie. and they played Notorious B.I.G. and then it starts and it's like, and then this music kicks in and I'm like, I got hit and I was like, whoa, like what is this? And I see everyone bopping their head and I was like, whoa, like what is, like everyone's rapping his song. I was like, man, this feeling is amazing. Like, I want to be able to give people the same feeling that I'm getting right now. Like this is the most unreal thing. So I ended up leaving and I just went home and wrote raps from that day. And like I said before, that's what really helped me get through my childhood, because I was always writing raps when I was feeling down or sad. I'd write a rap, and yeah, and that was just helping me so much. So when I decided when I was 13 that I wanted to be a rapper, and everyone laughed at me, thought it was silly, but I wanted to continue down that path no matter what. And so when I took a long venture away from it, because of people saying that would never happen, never amount to anything. So I let that get to me. But then around that time frame, I was like, no, I want to pursue this with all my heart. But I guess the biggest thing that I found when I was doing all these creative things, like I said, a lot of people have the same, I guess, values and the systems that they want to go party, drink, and do drugs, because a lot of them, what I found is, and this is a complete speculation, so I'm not saying this is the complete truth, but what I found is a lot of people that are actors are all people that have been broken and have had a pretty rough upbringing in some area of their lives. Not all of them. Some of them were either really privileged, lived the most perfect life ever, and never experienced anything horrible, or they were the other way around and had a very hard upbringing, and acting was an outlet to release. And I found through acting I was able to release a lot of my emotions from my childhood, crying about my brother's death like for the first time, because I was like able to actually go, wow, like it actually really affected me, and use that in acting. So there was, there's those two sides. But yeah, through that, I guess that's what led me to the adult entertainment industry, because I was looking for work, and I was like, man, I want something that's going to pay. I kind of want to do more acting stuff. And one of my friends at the time, she found the ad and was like, man, there's this modeling agency. They're paying like up to $700 an hour, like just for modeling. Like you should hit them up. Like I know you're looking for work. And I was like, oh, thanks. Yeah, I will. So I ended up contacting them, and then that's when I guess my life changed completely.
Yeah, no, this is a huge part of your testimony and a huge part of your story. And yeah, I think we should get into that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of sensitive topics here, and it's a really sensitive part of your life. So I appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to share that with people. But yeah, sort of go into whatever level of detail you want, and feel free to share about that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like my lifestyle, my values, I guess, was money, women, and materialistic items. The three things that I guess what people say makes you a man: power, money, respect. And obviously, the power I believe in and respect comes in through what the world portrays as being a man, is having lots of women, and being the I guess a womanizer. So they were my values going into this. So I sat down, I contacted the guy, and he's like, yeah, come in for an interview. I sat down with him, and he is just painting this picture of the lifestyle that I wanted to live. He's like, Jack, you deserve to live by the beach. You deserve to have the Lamborghini, the Maserati. Open your windows up. There's the beach. And that was my heart's desire. I like, from the moment that I wanted to be successful and famous, I was like, I want a house by the beach. Like that's all I want. I want a house by the beach. And like, because there was something about the beach, watching the sunrise, that for me was very spiritual, because I was very into New Age at this point. Manifest your own reality, name it, claim it, kind of stuff. And it's funny, a lot of the teachings, if you keep going further and further back, all of them stem from the Bible. It just slowly gets more twisted and I guess taken out of context as the more it goes on. But the first metaphysics teachings that I was listening to was Florence Scovel, and all of her teachings come from the Bible. A couple have come from other like ancient stories, like I think it was Aladdin, but I can't remember all of them. But a lot of her teachings were from the Bible. So I was having conversations with Christians, and I was quoting Bible verses to them, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah," thinking I was like almost saved, but I was a super New Age, and I was like, "Yeah, like the power of life and death's in the tongue, and you got to watch out with what you think, and you can't, you got to, if I can have faith, I can move a mountain," and all this stuff. And they're all like, "Yeah, yeah, that's so true. Like power and life and death's in the tongue." But I was doing it all for selfish gain, selfish reasons, to try and manifest my own reality, to be my own god, essentially. So this guy was sitting me down and he's painting this picture that I've always wanted. You know, you're going to live by the beach, you're going to have the nice clothes, you're going to have all the girls that you want at your disposal. And so he starts pitching me this stuff, and I'm in my mind, I'm not really listening to him, because I'm in my head going, "Wow, this is the life that I want. Like, I'm enticed. I've got the vision. I've got the picture." And little did I know, he started talking about porn, but he was saying it very, I guess, inconspicuous. I guess he wouldn't get in trouble. I'm not sure why, but he was doing it very inconspicuous, like saying, like, yeah, you can do a couple of films, and there'll be girls, and all this stuff. And I was just so enticed by hearing him say I could have a house by the beach, I could have the girls, I could have the cars. And then he was saying I could have sex and get paid doing it. Everything else, I just tuned out. And he started saying that I had to just do one video first. And this one video, could be a guy or a girl. And I didn't even hear this properly. I had to, it was only once I actually sat down and rethought about the whole conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's what he said. Like, I was so blinded by money, women, that everything else just faded away and the whole conversation was a blur. But he started saying that I just needed to do this one video. It was going to be a glory hole. And this was like the initiation into being a porn star. So I was like, man, like, heck yeah, like, porn star. That's all I've wanted to be. Like, it's a joke as a young kid, as young males, oh, the best job, the dream job is being a porn star, because you get to, get money while doing things that you would love to get money for. So I was like, man, I don't even care about anything else that he was hearing, because he said, you just do this one video. He dangled the carrot in front of my, I guess, the carrot in front of my eyes, and then said, but afterwards you'll be able to do like heaps of girls, like you can have double girls, threesomes, whatever you want, man. Like, you can have that. Just do this one video. So it was very, like, kind of pushed to the side, like, oh, you got to do this one video. It could be a girl or guy, but the girls, you can have girls afterwards. It was very, like, just kind of like, you know. So I just didn't really pay attention to it. And he's like, yeah, you'll get paid $500, $600 for half an hour work. He's like, man, it's awesome. So I was like, yeah, I'll go think about it. And I'm sitting in my heart going, heck yeah, like, this is my dream job, a porn star. Like, yeah, again, like, not thinking about the consequences to my actions, and just going, yes, like, money, women, all that I want, and not really thinking about, hey, this is going to be online forever, and all the other things behind that. So I ended up saying yes to the video. I did the video. I ended up getting given the money. I signed the contract that I had to sign to do after doing the video. And then afterwards, I was looking at the money and I felt dirty. Like, I was like, oh man, I feel so dirty. And I was like, why do I feel dirty? It wasn't a dirty that, like, I could clean myself dirty. It was a dirty, like, in my spirit, like, inside my soul, I felt unclean. And I went home, I had a shower, and I couldn't wash this dirt off me. It was almost like shame, guilt. I don't know what the true substance of it was at the time, but I'm trying to wash it away, and I couldn't get it off. And I looked at the money. I was like, that's awesome. I was doing a production at the time. I wrote my own script, doing the production, so that money went to pay for the production of my I guess, the movie that I was trying to make. So it helped. It served its benefit. It served its purpose at the time. And then he was messaging me saying, "Do you want to do another one?" And I thought it was the dream that I had. But he was saying, you need to do one more video like that, and then after you do that video, then you're going to have the girls, like, as many girls as you want. And there was just something inside my heart that said, don't do it. And I was like, man, why do I feel that way? Like, this is my dream job. This is all I want to do. Like, why do I care? Like, why am I feeling this way? So I didn't know why that I felt that way, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to not do it. I'm going to listen to that feeling. And I never listen to that feeling very often. So I was very bad at that. I know some people, like, get that gut feeling. They always get guided by it. And, I believe that intuition is like that connection. It's not a connection, but it's that God speaking to us, but we don't have the full connection. It's just those little things that he can drop to us to try and help us when we can. And if we reach out or listen to it, sometimes it really does help us. So I wasn't really good at listening to that voice. So I listened to it, and I continued my my productions, and I was pitching it to try and get it to Netflix, and we ended up getting funding from the government. And yeah, it was really, really well. It was a great TV series plot that I made. It was like, yeah, I thought it was going to be the next best thing next to Home and Away. Like, it was awesome in my eyes, and yeah, I thought it was great. So we had a crew, we had everything, we got it all done. And then, yeah, sadly, it got lost in post production. Like, the editor, it always gets lost in post. I don't know what the problem is, but yeah, one of the editors did something, and all the footage got corrupted. And I was like, man, this is so hard. But we still got a trailer from it, and we're able to use that trailer to continue to pitch to get more funding and more things more funding for the next production. So we ended up getting the next production done. So I guess I'd forgotten about the video that I did at this point. So I was like, oh, I need to focus on this production. It's going somewhere. It's going places. We're getting attraction. We're getting funding. We had like sponsorships, people giving us products for free to promote through the video and the videos that we're doing. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I kind of pushed it to the side. I kind of forgot about the messages that old mate was sending me. And then I continued with this production. And it probably would have been, I think I was in the middle of my next production of my next show that we were making. It was called Pinewood Bay. And this was going to be a pilot episode that we were going to pitch to Netflix properly this time. We had a team of script writers, all this stuff. And I was really pursuing my music a lot harder at this point as well. So I was, again, juggling all the hats. Taking stand-up comedy really seriously. I ended up getting into like one of the really well-renowned groups on the Gold Coast and doing my first show. So I was really pumped, and people had been doing stand-up comedy for years and they'd never gotten into that group, and I got into it within the first couple of months of doing stand-up. So I knew that God had given me a gift, of articulating, telling stories, and I love to make people laugh. And again, like, the desire of wanting to make people laugh came from being so hurt and so broken in my childhood and not having joy in my heart. And the only time I experienced joy was being drunk or high. So I wanted to give people that joy that I never experienced. So that's what led me into stand-up comedy, just wanting to make people laugh and feel good because I didn't feel good. So yeah, it's very funny. And I saw that throughout the stand-up comedy world in Queensland, that a lot of people that were doing it were all, again, hurt and trying to turn their stories that they had and experienced into something funny to make other people laugh. So it comes from a good place, but it's just, yeah, you can see the pain in some people, not all people, but some people that I saw. So I'd forgotten about that video, and we're in the stages of our next production. We were getting a lot of traction, like we're getting articles written up in the paper and stuff. So it was really good. It was looking really good. My life was looking really good. I had been signed by an indie record label for rapping. They had picked me up from a group in Melbourne. I can't remember what their name was, but they'd like approached me and said, like, hey, we're an indie record label. We'd love to help promote your stuff and get it from the ground up. I had a really, really well-known manager approach me, and he said the branding for my rapping was looking really good. And when I first started rapping, I didn't know what a name should be called, but I ended up getting the name Statement. And I'm trying to remember the timelines exactly, but I'll just share it here so that I can share it, and then I guess everything will follow from that. But when I was starting to do all of that and all these things were happening, the record label, yep, that's it. I remember. So I got approached by the indie record label, and they said I needed to get EP pack done, like an EPK, and that's like an electronic press kit release. So I'm trying to get this electronic press kit release, and it said I needed branding to be done. I needed to have an image, and I needed to have a rap name. And at this stage, I didn't have any of that. I was just producing music and just putting it out under my name, Jack Smith. Very bland, vanilla name. So they're like, we need these three things from you. And as I was thinking about that, I posted on my Facebook and saying, I got approached by a record label, like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I'm so excited. And then I got a random message in my message requests. And I never normally look at my Facebook message requests, but I did this time. And I don't know why I did. But there was this guy, and he said, hey, is this you? And I was like, oh, I don't know why I did it, but I was like, oh, I'll just click on it. And I clicked on it, and he had sent me a video of the video that I did. And at this point, I didn't know anything about the video. I'd forgotten about it. I, just did it. I didn't know what was on the other side because, again, it was a glory hole. Like, you don't get to see what's on the other side. And I just remember my heart sinking. Like, I was like, oh, no. And it was that feeling, I don't know if you ever felt it when you were a kid and you've done something horribly wrong and you get that burning in your chest, like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to get in trouble. It was like that, but like uncomprehendable burning. Like, I've done something so wrong. Like, what have I done? And he sent me a video of the video that I did, and ended up being a guy, not a girl. And I was like, oh no. And he then started to, I guess, antagonize me from that point. And he's like, I'm going to ruin your life. I'm going to make sure that that record label never hires you. How they're going to feel knowing that you're a gay porn star. Like, you just started attacking me, saying you're worthless, you're disgusting. I can't believe you did a video like this. Like, no one does a video like that unless they're just so disgusting. Like, you must have such low self-esteem. And I'm like sitting there going, oh my goodness. And I'm trying to make a joke out of it because I am terrified. Like, I'm like, oh no, this guy has got something on me. And he's like, I'm going to share it with all your friends, all your family. I'm going to put it up on Facebook, like all this stuff. And I'm like almost crying at this point, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, is there anything you want me to do? He's like, yeah, I want you to allow me to give you oral, and then we'll forget about this ever happening. So he's trying to blackmail me to do sexual acts with him and him to do it with me. And I'm like, man, I'm sorry. Like, I don't swing that way. Like, like this was been a big mistake. I thought it was going to be a girl. And he's like, yeah, I bet you did. Like, he's like, I bet you got paid this much money to do it. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, man, how's this guy know all this stuff? And yeah, just the world was crashing down. He kept sending me videos and screenshots and video pictures from the video that I did, and then just again just antagonizing me. And he's like, you need to do something. I'm gonna do something to you. And at this point, I'm freaking out. Like, I didn't know I was gonna. I felt like vomiting. I was like, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. And I remember calling up one of my good friends at the time. Like, I was like, he's the only person I could confide into. And I called him up and said, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And he was like, man, I don't know. Like, maybe go see a lawyer. And I was like, all right, sure, I'll go see a lawyer. And he's been doing this for about a couple of weeks now. He's like, you need to make your mind up. You need to do something. And then I was like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, all right, if you don't want to do that, send me money. So I had to send him a sum of money just to silence him, because I didn't want to do the performing of any sexual acts. So I had to send him a sum of money to kind of silence him from doing that. And then I went and saw the lawyer. And as I saw the lawyer, this lawyer, he was down the road. He was like 5 minutes down the road. So I went to the closest one possible to in Gold Coast. I went and saw him, and the lawyer is just, man, he's just having a go at me. Like, man, you're disgusting. You're worthless. Like, I can't believe you did a video like this. Like, who does a video like that? Man, that's disgusting. He's like, you're going to have to make me go through hours of gay porn. Like, that's just gross. Like, man, I can't believe you did this video. Like, just again, just boom, boom, boom. Like, you're worthless. You're disgusting. And I can't believe, like, you have no self-worth. Like, just those are the three things that kept getting repeated. Like, I can't believe you did a video. Like, he's like, who does that? Like, who does porn? Like, he's like, bro, you're just filthy. Like, I'm sitting there going, bro, this is a lawyer. Like, what do you have? What's happening? Like, I'm just getting beaten down. Like, I was like, man, I had my head like in my lap. Like, I was so beaten at this point because this guy's been harassing me for weeks on end, and I had to show him the messages that he'd been speaking to me. He's like, and the guy wanted me to send him a voice video, sorry, a video of me apologizing for doing the video. And the lawyer's watching me. He's like, you sent him a video. He's like, oh my goodness, you're pathetic. Like, why would you listen to this guy? He's like, this guy's just. And then he ended up like doing some investigation. He knew the guy, and he ended up being this Instagram famous person. And he was like, oh, we've got some publicity here. Oh, this is good. This is good. All right, I can see it now in the newspaper. Like, gay boy gets blackmailed to do porn. And then I was like, no, like, I don't want to do this. And he wanted to take him to court. He wanted to sue him and get him done for blackmail and extortion. And I was like, no, because I knew he wanted to. He knew it was an easy case to win because he had evidence. We had lots of evidence and all of this stuff. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to go on the paper. I don't want to be known as a gay porn star. Like, I don't want to. I'm ashamed of myself. So that was what was happening. And then when I made my branding for my music, I was so terrified at this point of getting known and getting seen as a gay porn star that I began to hide my identity. So Statement was my rap artist name before Christ. And if you look at the very old videos, I think I deleted most of them now, but I can show videos or have photos of what I used to look like. But I had a mask on for every video, every photo. I had a mask on. I never like revealed my identity. I pretended to be a person from Japan because I wanted to be like so separated from that. And I was so, again, just so terrified of being in the limelight. I took myself away from stand-up comedy. But I was getting offered to do other gigs around, I guess, the East Coast of Australia. Just was like, no, I'm not doing stand-up comedy anymore. I don't want to do it. So I took myself away from it, and then I was doing the production, and we were getting news reports and everything. And I was the reason why that was happening. I spent hours and hours and hours of doing the post production. I was doing I've got everything done essentially to get it to where it was. And one of my friends that was the co-producer, who was helping me a little bit on it, he took the limelight. I let him take the spotlight for it. He was on the news. He was speaking. He was the voice. He was the poster boy for it all. And I just took the back seat, and I was like, I don't want to be known. Everyone during the production was asking me like, Jack, why are you allowing him to do that? Why are you? This is your film. This is your production. I was like, no, it's all good. Like, I don't care. He can do that. I don't want to be like known in the spotlight. Everyone thinking I'm real humble, but really I'm just so terrified of being on the news, and then someone saying that, oh, you're the gay porn star, and I'm going to blackmail your production now. So I was like, I didn't want that to happen. So I just took the back seat. And during this time, I was paying off to do motivational speaking. So I had this motivational speaking course to go down to Sydney, and I was going to become a motivational speaker. So all this stuff was happening. I was really fighting depression at this point. I was, self-harming. I thought I was worthless. I started to believe those words about what people said to me. I was like, I was worthless. I was disgusting. I had no hope. I was just worthless. I'm pathetic for doing a video like this. I started to really believe that. So I had really low self-esteem at this point. Self-harming started to become more apparent. I just really hated the way I looked, like my self-image. I hated it. I was thinking about how could I change my appearance so no one would know who I am. I was going to get head tattoos, like face tattoos. I was going to get head to toe just covered in tattoos. I was thinking about cutting my face, like disfiguring it in a way that no one would recognize me. I was just thinking of all these ways to try and, I guess, hide, so people wouldn't know who I was. I was thinking about how I could make it a joke, like make a stand-up comedy act routine around it to make it a joke and expose myself. Like I was thinking about even becoming gay, so it didn't seem that bad. Like there's all these things that in scenarios I was trying to think of to just get away from, I guess, the mistake that I had made. And it was really just weighing heavy on me. And then when I did the motivational speaking course, it was a 7 days intensive course in Sydney. It gave me a little glimmer of hope because I learned how to speak in a way that would be able to redefine my circumstance, redefine my situation. So I then began to start writing the horrible things that are happening to me in the hope that I would have an opportunity to share it in a positive light. So I wanted to warn people not to do it because I heard that this is actually a very common thing that happens to young males, and a lot of them do commit suicide afterwards, and some of them, just go off the rails because it is quite, it's very, very. I feel like it's very thought out. It's a very thought out plan to really attack young males and take advantage of them. So I had that hope in me, but fast forward, it's probably been about a year now. I meet a girl, I fall in love with her, and again, I put my identity into her. So now my value and hope's in her. And it was a very toxic relationship. I was very unstable, full of trauma, full of like very codependent behaviors, very manipulative, and she was very similar too. So it was very abusive. It was toxic. We'd get into verbal arguments. We'd get physical. Like it was really bad. I was such a horrible person, so broken, so damaged that I just couldn't deal with it. I was fighting these voices in my head because the drug use started to get a bit worse. I smoked a lot of weed at this point to try and calm myself with all the anxieties. But every time I'd smoke weed, I would hear a voice in my head They would show me the video that I did and just say, "You're worthless, you're disgusting, you're never going to make anything of yourself. Like, why are you even trying to rap? You should just kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself." Every time I smoked weed, it'd get worse and worse. Because normally, when I was a kid, I would smoke weed and escape from my realities, and it helped me because I was escaping, made me feel joy, I'm happy. But now I'm smoking weed, and now it's bringing me deeper into my darkness, and it's just taking me down into this pit of despair. So I started to freak out because I was like, oh no, like my I guess my comforter is turning on me. It's coming against me. My partner was going out partying a lot. She loved to do drugs as well. So I'm fighting this anxiety in me of not feeling good enough, feeling worthless, and fighting this anxiety that she's cheating on me. And I didn't know how to cope with it, didn't know how to deal with it. So I just attack her, and I'm freaking out 24/7, trying to smoke weed, not helping. And then this is when the self harm started to get a lot worse. I was punching walls, punching things, breaking like my little bones in my wrist. My mind at this point felt like it split. Like it was mashed potato. Like that was the best way to explain my brain at this point. Like I was so indecisive. I was so confused of who I was. I was broken. I was a mess. There was one half of me that thought my partner was a devil that was cheating on me. There's another part of me that thought she was an angel, that that I was the dirty, filthy, disgusting person, and I'm the one that deserves to be punished, not her. And the thing that set it off the most was because she got an STD halfway through the relationship, and that just spiraled me out of control. I was like, "Nah, like you're cheating," and no, you're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. And she just had enough of me, so she broke up with me, and then would be back together. And she broke up with me, but there was this one moment that I really, really remember, and this is just kind of the tipping point for me. Was my partner had broken up with me. She's like, "I've had enough of you. I've had enough doing this stuff." And while she was talking to me, I saw that she had text messages from this guy that she'd met at yoga. And I was like, "Bro, like, what's going on? Like, why? That's not okay." Like, and she's like, "You know what? You can't control me. I'm done. We're out. Like, I'm out of here." She left. She walks away. That night, I get phone. I see all my mates start sending me the video, and I'm like, "What the heck's happening?" And so someone had found the video. One of my good friends, I believe, found the video and started sharing it with everyone on the Sunshine Coast that I was friends with, and just started. All of my friends started saying like, "Well, you gay? Are you gay now? You're a gay porn star." I was getting phone calls from people saying, "What the heck's this video?" And in my heart, I was just like, "No, no, I don't want to do this. No, 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 no. Please, please, no, no, no." And I just felt despair. I felt broken, and I felt dirty. And I don't know why, but I began to break. I just broke down and I cried like I'd never cried before. It was like this guttural scream of like, oh, like my life is over. Like this is it. I've got nothing to live for. I'm a joke to my friends. I'm a joke to my family. I've sinned. Like this is the first conscious thing that I'd made. Like I had sinned and I'd lost my partner. And I had this. It was like a full prodigal moment of the prodigal son. Like, and I didn't even know the Bible at all. Really, at this point, I knew the manifestation Bible verses, but I never read it. I just listened to people telling me how I could get my own life that I wanted from the Bible. As long as it was talking about blessings, I didn't care about the other stuff. But I had this moment where I was crying and crying and crying on the floor, like complete brokenness. And I looked up and I said, "I'm sorry, Father. I'm sorry, Father." And I don't know why I said that, but I felt, because I was really in like I guess my persona of my rap character. He was Japanese, so I loved the Japanese culture, and it was all about honor and about the family's honor. And if you did things to honor your family, and I felt I disgraced my father's name, and all I thought was, "I'm sorry to my earthly dad." I was like, "I'm so sorry for my dad. Like I've dishonored his name. Like I don't deserve to be his son." And I was just, all I kept thinking about was him at work getting the video, seeing it, and just being so disgusted in his son, like going, "What the heck is my son doing? That's like what?" And just the guilt and the shame that he might feel from knowing that his son's doing that stuff. And I had this burning in me just to say sorry. Like I'm so sorry for what I've done. I'm so sorry for what I've done. I'm so sorry for what I've done. I'm sorry, Father. I'm sorry for my dad. I'm so sorry I dishonored you. I dishonored you. I'm so sorry for what I've done. Like that's all that came out of my heart. And I was crying and crying and crying. And And I've been battling these suicidal thoughts for about a year now, maybe a year and a half, maybe longer. And that voice just saying to end your life, end your life, end your life was just getting louder and louder and louder throughout throughout the year. And then at this point, when I had broken down and had nothing left, I just felt in my heart just that voice come back in and say, end your life. Just end your life. You have nothing to live for. End your life. And I just remember going, yeah, you know what? I have nothing to live for. What's the point of living? Like, what's the point? I've ruined everything. I have nothing to go for. I've got nothing going for me. I think I should just end my life. So I looked up and I listened to that voice, and I went out of my house, and I again rolled a joint, because I was like, I'm going to end my life. I'm going to, do it with being high, because that's the only way I can really see myself doing it. And I, funny enough, said when I walked out the door, I looked at this joint and I said, this is the last time I'm ever going to smoke you. And I was walking, and I was very spiritual at this point. I really believed in the universe. I believed that I spoke to the universe spoke back. I was very into this new age of, put out to the universe will give back. But I would wake up every morning, and I used to work along the beach. So I'd see the sun rise every morning, and I had this really deep moment in me where I'd always go and I needed to watch the sunrise, and I would thank the universe for the day. I'd thank the universe for all these things that he's given me, speak to it, and I would always get communication back. So I knew there was something there. And, Gold Coast is littered with all different religions and stuff like that. So I knew there was something. So when I go to end my life, I'm walking out the door and I'm looking up to the sky and I'm saying, I know there's something there. And I know you've been listening to me. And I said, well, if there really is a God, and this is the first time I really acknowledged it, that it was God, not the universe or a higher power or source. I said, if there's a God, if you're really there, God, you need to give me a sign. I was like, that's what you need to do. If you're God, that's what you'll do. You'll give me a sign. And then I thought to myself, like, no, I've had enough signs. Like, I get signs all the time. Like, there's nothing, I don't want another sign. Like, that's not good enough. That's not going to prove God's existence. I was like, no, I was like, yeah, actually, God, if you're real, like, if you're really real, you'll do one better than give me a sign. I was like, you'll come down and you'll tell me, you'll speak to me, you'll tell me that I'm on the right path and everything's going to be okay. I was like, that's what you'll do if you're God. And I just walked. I walked and I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I didn't want to be in this life anymore. I knew I didn't want to live. I knew all these things that I just didn't want to be here. And I didn't know how I was going to end my life. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I just knew I was going to end my life. I didn't know what it looked like, but I didn't even know if I had the courage to do it. But I knew I didn't want to be here. I was just so set, unconfirmed. I was like, I don't want to live here. I'm going to listen to this voice. I'm going to kill myself. And I remember I was walking along this path, and I'm trying to convince myself to, I guess, go home and just try and make everything better. But this thing inside my heart said, just keep walking, just keep walking, just keep walking. So I looked like a fruitcake. Like, at this point, I would be talking to myself out loud. Like, it felt like my mind had completely departed, and I was lost, and I was fighting myself. So I'd be like, oh, I should do this. And I'd walk around. I'm like, no, don't do that. You're so indecisive. Blah, blah, blah. Walk back, and I'd turn around, start walking the other direction. And I was like, oh, I'll just do this. And then try and turn around. And I was like, no, don't do that. You're doing this. And then I'd walk around. And I'm like, man, if anyone was looking at me, I would have been a fruitcake. Like, I was just yelling at myself, walking back and forth, and just trying to decide if I should just actually do what I was saying I was going to do. And I just was walking, and then that's when I saw the homeless man on the side of the road. And that's when my life just changed completely. And I don't share this, I don't go into too much detail with all of it because there's so much details, but I feel like to do it in this. But I was smoking my joint, and the homeless man was asleep in a gazebo, and I felt to go and try and do something nice and compassionate for him, just the last act of being a good Samaritan. And I saw him, but he was asleep, and I was like, no, there's no point. I'm just going to leave. But I felt like I really wanted to help this guy, so I stayed around the area, and there was a little park with a little flying fox swing that swings. So I was like, I'll just try and be a kid again. I'll just try and make myself happy, and maybe I don't need to end my life. And I jumped on the swing, I swung, And I was like, oh, no, that didn't work. I just need to end my life. Like, what am I doing? I'm being an idiot. And I look back at the gazebo and the homeless man sitting there, and he's smiling at me, just eating an apple. And I'm like, well, what the heck? He was asleep before. Like, why is he awake? And I felt this burning in my heart that said, you need to go talk to him and you need to try and do your last act of being a good Samaritan. And for some reason, I looked at my joint and said, I can't bring this around him. And I put the joint down and I walked up to him and I said, hey, man, do you need some food? And he smiled at me. He's like, no, I'm all good, while eating an apple. And I'm like, oh, man, like, why am I even trying to help this guy? Like, I'm so pathetic. I'm so worthless. I can't even help a guy that has nothing. He has, like, I have everything. And this guy's more joyful than me. He has nothing. And I said, hey, man, do you need some blankets? He's like, no, I'm all good. I was like, far out. I was like, stuff this, like, whatever. And I went to walk away, and I just felt this voice just come out of me. Like, I don't even remember why I said this, but I said, hey, man, I'm a poet. I'd love to just hear your story. I don't even know why I said that, but I said that to him. And he looks at me and smiles and says, hey, Jesus loves you. He forgives you for the sins that you have done. I'm pretty sure the exact words he said was, he died on the cross for the forgiveness of your sins. And I was like, what? No, I was like, this can't be real. It's like, nah, this can't be real. And then he said, hey, God wanted me to tell you that you're on the right path and everything's going to be okay. I was like, oh my gosh, no, like this can't be real. Like, I was like, out of all the religions, I guess, out of all the things, Jesus is the one that's real. I was like, man, that can't be true. Like, I had blasphemed so much against God. I used to say how much I hated him. I used to roll joints out of the Bible. I'd ridicule him. I'd say he's fake. And I was like, out of all the religions, you're the one that's coming to me. I was like, this can't be real. And I just thought in my head about all the sins. This homeless man began to rattle off scriptures like a machine gun. He was like, it says in John, he was just like spraying scriptures out, and I wasn't even listening to him because all I could think about in my heart was, man, like, I have sinned against a holy God. And like the recollection of the 10 Commandments came up. Do not lie, do not steal, do not commit adultery, do not use God's name in vain. And I was like, I've broken all of them. I've sinned. And I became sin conscious for the first time in my whole life. I became sin conscious, and I was sitting there and I was just in disbelief. And I was like, man, this can't be real. This can't be real. And he looks at me and he smiles and he's like, disbelieving's a sin, right? I'm like, all right, this guy can read my mind. Like, oh my goodness. Like, oh, this is freaky. And I was just sitting there and I was like, this is insane. This is insane. And I still didn't want to give, like, even though that was the most crazy thing ever, I still in that moment was like, nah, like this isn't real. I'm just tripping out. Like, it's all good. And he then looked at me and said, hey, I know what you've been through. You're going to go kill yourself. I want to tell you not to do that. That's a sin. He said, you're a model. You did prostitution with a male and you want to go be a motivational speaker when you're older. He's like, I don't see that. You're going to be a preacher. And then that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, you're real. You are real. And I was like, I don't want to live this life anymore. And I was going to end my life. It's like, but God, if you have a life that's better, I give you my life and I want the life that you have for me. And in that moment, I surrendered my heart to Jesus. And oh man, it's hard to imagine that this happened. Like, it's so hard for me to fathom that the God of the universe would send a homeless man to come down to speak the exact thing that I needed, to declare the scriptures, declare the goodness of God, to tell me the gospel, to share the good news, but then to prophesy over me. And then from that moment, he started to prophesy my whole life. I honestly don't remember like half the things he said. I remember that one of the prophecies after being a preacher was I was going to have a wife and a beautiful family. And I'm now living that now, which is just, again, like, all glory to God. But it's so hard to comprehend. And it's so hard to fathom that he would do that just for me. And he does that for everyone. Like, he goes above and beyond what we can ask, think, or imagine, according to his power that's work within us. And then at that moment, I was like, I believe in you, Jesus. And he looked at me and smiled and said, hey, you said you're a poet. Could I share some poetry with you? And I said, yeah, yeah, of course, man. Of course you can share some poetry. I'd love that. And he just looks at me and goes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's speaking another language so fast or speaking something fast. And then boom, Holy Spirit hits me. And for the first time in my life, I cried with joy in my heart and I felt the love of God hit me. And it was the most beautiful, most powerful thing I've ever experienced. And I was like, what was that, man? What was that? And he's like, you needed that, didn't you? I was like, you have no idea. I went to kill myself, man. I was like, I asked God for a sign. You gave it to me. I was like, I guess you do know because you told me that. And I was sitting there and he's like, hey, man, can I give you a hug? I was like, yeah, please. And he gave me a hug. It's like, Jesus loves you. I was like, thank you. And I was so full of joy. And man, I still can't believe, because if it wasn't for that moment, I honestly don't believe I'd be alive. And it was because it's selfishness to want to end your life, because I was only thinking about myself. I didn't think about my family and how that would affect them. But I was so full of joy in that moment. It was just the typical, the grass was greener, the sky was brighter, the trees looked different, everything looked different. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this world is beautiful. And even though I had a passion for nature, I love nature. I was always wanting to be in nature. I was always wanting to be out and watching the sunset, sunrises. It was like a vow in my heart. Now I had like an appreciation that it was all made for me. It was made for me. He made this for me. It was so I could splendor in his glory. And I ran home. I didn't know why. I had no phone on me, nothing. I was like, I need to tell someone this. I need to tell someone this. Who am I going to tell? I was thinking of all my friends that I could call. And I was like, I need to tell someone this. And I ran home and I was like, oh my gosh, Jesus, you're real. You love me. You're real. And I'm jumping, I'm skipping, I'm going home. I'm like, yeah, he's real. He's real. Like, oh my gosh. And I'm like full of this joy that it's unexplainable, unexpressible. I don't know what to do. So I just called my ex. And I was like, I know you're not going to believe me. I know you're not going to believe what's happened, but you need to come see me right now. I just met God. Like, you need to come see me. And then she's like, what the heck? This guy's a Fruit Loop. I come. She comes, sorry. And I tell her the story. I tell her everything that's happened. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, Jesus, I did this. And then, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sharing this story with her. And she's like, look, I don't believe you. I believe you, but I don't believe Jesus is God. But you're shining. She's like, your literally face is glowing right now. She was finding it like hard to look at me. She's like, you're glowing. And I was like, oh my gosh. But after I shared that with her, she kind of got angry at me, because she's like, why would God reveal himself to you and not me? Like, I'm asking for God too. Like, why didn't you reveal it to me? And I was like, oh, well, he will. He will. You ask and you will receive. Like, I'm just beamed up. Like, I just thought, oh my gosh, like Jesus is real. Like, oh my gosh, like Jesus is real. And I don't know why, but for some strange reason, I try to get back into a relationship with her, because when he prophesied it was going to be a husband and I'm going to be a good husband and have a family, I for some reason connected. I was like, oh, maybe it's going to be her. And that was very foolish. But that's the moment that my life completely changed. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, that is incredible. And it's just so encouraging seeing how God's redeemed you from such a low point in your life. How has your life changed since then, man? I mean, you've mentioned that you're married, you've got a baby. It
Mm.
seems that you're chasing completely different things, although maybe you could actually give people a bit of an insight into what you're still doing, because you're still using your giftings for God, but
Yeah.
just in a completely different way. So, yeah, maybe you could share a little
Yeah.
bit about your life now.
Yeah. Well, ever since that moment, I want to share a brief little snippet, if it's okay, just in regards to after that moment. I try to stay in that relationship, and it wasn't working. It was really toxic. It was very ungodly, and God actually called me to leave the Gold Coast and move back home. And He put me in a very uncomfortable situation. He put me in a life where I was back at home with my mum, who was still suffering, my dad, who was still suffering, and He said, "This time you're going to do it with me." And I learned how to cope with trauma, learn how to deal with those existential crises that I was facing, but with Christ now. And I just wanted to share that part was the most rewarding thing, one of the most rewarding things for me, because even though I was in one of the darkest places as a child, again as an adult now, but I had Christ, it was so much different because I had a firm foundation to lean on. And I ended up leaving that relationship knowing that it wasn't love, because I experienced true love, and that was in Christ. And the way that I experienced that was through intimacy, by spending every waking morning with Jesus in the Word of God, praying, accepting His love, allowing His love to fill me. And that's when I really realized that what true love looks like. And it's not lust. It's not this thing that we can fulfill. It's an indwelling of the Holy Spirit, completing us and having a union with Christ through the Holy Spirit and through the Holy Scriptures. And yeah, I just wanted to share that, just because that, if it wasn't for that shift and that change in my life, if I wasn't actively spending time with Christ, I would have never got to where I am now. Because even though that moment was so real, so tangible, there was other moments that happened as well with other people that were just, again, unexplainable. And that, even though they were so rich and so deep, the enemy was very easily to try and confuse me about it, because a lot of people were saying that was fake. A lot of people were saying that you're just making that up. And a lot of people were just saying that homeless guy was just a good guesser, or he was clairvoyant. Like, I'm sitting there going, bro, like, why would I lie about this? Like, I didn't care about Jesus. Like, why would I want to lie about Jesus? Like, I don't care about that stuff. I was like, if I was going to lie about anything, I'd lie about having sex with a superstar, like, a Playboy bunny, or, something, or a famous movie star. Like, I wouldn't lie about meeting Jesus. Like, all my friends turned away from me. Everyone shunned me. So I was like, why would I want to lie about that? That's horrible, Yeah. So I was really confused. So if it wasn't for the secret place, I think the enemy would have easily been able to rob the seed that was planted in my heart, even though it was planted in tremendous trajectory of a supernatural experience. It still could have easily been robbed if I didn't go water it myself and cultivate that seed and, fertilize the ground. So I just wanted to share that, just because it's such an important thing about my testimonies. I don't want people just to think, oh, if I had a supernatural experience like that, I would believe in Jesus more. If God spoke to me and came down with the clouds, then I would believe more, because it doesn't matter about a supernatural experience, even though I'm very grateful for that, because it shows the reality of Christ to others through my experience.
Amen.
But it could easily have been robbed if I didn't just go in the secret place. And now I have experiences like that with Christ every moment, almost every day, when I go into the secret place and pray, and I feel the tangible love of God. And it's just from that act of surrender, coming and being intimate and vulnerable with Him, and allowing Him to come and speak to you in those moments. And yeah, I think that's very vital. The church needs to teach on in more depth and more detail, because I see people in a consumerism Christianity. They go to speaker to speaker, preacher to preacher, the anointed man of God. But, it says in 1 John that we've all been received the anointing from the anointed one, and to receive it. Why do we need to go find an anointing? We've got it. We just need to go in the secret place, and we can receive it from the man himself. We don't need to go to another man. So I just want to encourage people with that. But yeah, my life is radically changed, and it's all by the grace of God, all for His glory. And I would be nothing without Him. I would be nobody without Christ. But I've got the privilege and the absolute honor and opportunity to continue to spread the gospel, share my testimony like I'm doing with you now, and just to encourage people about the faith of Jesus Christ and the reality of Jesus, because He's so real, He's so loving. And when I was not a Christian, I had such a skewed image of Christianity, that it was, judgmental, uptighty 180, straighty 80 people that don't care about anyone else. They just want to be in their clique. Because I knew Christians that were very, judgy and just didn't care about people, and it was just not really living for Christ and living Christ-like. And then, I thought it was just man-made. I thought the Bible was man-made, and I actually didn't even do any research for myself. I just believed whatever someone told me about it. And, there's a lot of compelling arguments and research and historical facts on the actuality of the New Testament and the divinity of Christ, and Christ being an actual person. And even us just living in 2024 AD is enough proof in itself that He changed the calendar. So just a lot of lack of information. But I have the privilege now to go to schools. I tour with a company called JC Action Sports, and I get to preach the gospel and share the gospel, share my testimony, share encouraging messages. And I also get to use my gift, rap, to engage and I guess engage an audience of the younger generation to, I guess, as a way and a vehicle to get into schools and to be able to share the gospel and have that relatability of being a role model for them, the way that, you know, the other rappers were role models to me. But this time, instead of promoting drugs, sex, and violence, I'm promoting the complete opposite of righteousness, holiness, and the surrender to Christ. And my mission with my music is to convict by, you know, the Holy Spirit through me, to convict a generation to live for Christ truly and wholeheartedly, not this lukewarm Christianity where you can still be in the world and, you know, just go to church on Sunday or just know about Jesus but live in a sinful lifestyle, but a full true conversion where you thirst for righteousness and you despise unrighteousness, you hate wickedness. And I'm going really, this year I've quit my job, I'm walking by faith, and I'm just pursuing music with all my heart. I've got a whole bunch of songs lined up that I'm so grateful for and super like pumped to share with the world because they're encouraging. Because again, life and death is in the power of the tongue. So what we're listening to and we're speaking over ourselves. I heard one preacher say that, you know, we have our voices, like our words are a life and spirit and life, that Jesus says. So if we're speaking spiritually and we're speaking death over ourselves, you know, how much could that cause as if we're doing that? And if music that we're listening to is, you know, speaking death and horrible things, and we're speaking that over ourselves, man, how much damage are we doing without knowing? And I know the effects, the power of music and how it made me want to live a complete different lifestyle to, you know, what I was living. You know, I watched one of my good friends turn into a gang member because the rappers he was listening to were all talking about gangs and all this stuff, and he longed for that gang mentality. And I watch him he was a good friend of mine, real nice, like innocent kid, you know, still a bit of a rebel, but, you know, innocent at heart. And he just completely went to the gang life in juvie, out of juvie, and yeah, it was really, really hard to see. And a lot of the friends that we used to hang out with are all in jail or, you know, drug addicts, which is, yeah, just heartbreaking. So I know the power of music. So I want to use the gift that God's given me to really inspire the generations and people, like young adults as well. And I want to go to as many many places God appoints me to go to share the gospel. I'll never actively look for an opportunity to share my testimony. I'll never actively look for a place to go rap. I only allow opportunities to come to me because that's, again, I want to surrender that to the Lord and just allow him to do his work in that. And then I know that I'm meant to be there because God's opened the doors. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing ministry wise. But obviously, my first ministry, my most important one's my wife and my child. I've just had a little son. I'm so grateful. We've called him Seeker. And yeah, we're just really, really grateful for him. So I'm just sowing into him, reading, praying over him, reading the word of God over him, prophesying over him, you know, just declaring the goodness of the Lord over him every morning, and just, yeah, really making sure I'm there for my wife and supporting her as she goes through this transition of recovery. And yeah, just again, just trying my best to be a godly husband and godly father, and learning what that looks like in more depth, and also being in the secret place so I can be fueled up to do that for them, and then making music. And yeah, so yeah, that's the glory that God has and the grace that He's given me in this season and my life. And you know, I had this moment that I'd really love to share. I looked at my son for one of the first times, and I just thought about the person that I used to be. And I always had this vow with my friends, you know, if we ever got a girl knocked up or anything, we'd force her. You know, that was the mentality. We'd force her to get an abortion because we were so selfish, so entitled in the life that we wanted to live, that we didn't want to be tied down, you know, to living and raising a child. And I looked at him and I wept. And I was like, man, if it wasn't for God, you wouldn't even be here. Because if I was not saved, I would have aborted you. Like, and I was looking at him weeping, just going, how beautiful, how innocent, how sincere his love is, you know. And I'm like, man, if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't even have you. And I wept and cried and I said, God, thank you for forgiving me because I did not know what I was doing. And it gave me this great compassion for other people that they do not know what they're doing. I was so blinded by the powers of darkness. I was so blinded by the gospel of truth. I was so blinded by the things I was doing because I was so self absorbed about wanting to live the lifestyle that I wanted to live. And I actually really want to share this because I've never shared this in a testimony before. Again, if this is okay,
Of course.
because I always forget, but it's something that really really was hard for me when I first transitioned. So I had that amazing encounter with the Lord and another encounter, and then I had this job where I was in a coffee van, and the Lord told me to get it because it was going to help me find a church. And I ended up finding a church in Gold Coast called Our Community, and the pastor was Ben Ragniff. And man, I just want to honor that man right now. If it wasn't for Ben, I would not be the man I am today as well, because he had so much time to disciple me. And I had so many questions, and he answered all of them with grace and love. And he, even though I left Sunshine Coast, he still called me once a week to check up on me, make sure I was running the race. And man, yeah, just the love that that man has for Jesus. The first time I went to his church, I was watching him worship, and he was just weeping and crying. And that was the first time I had ever seen a grown man, cry in front of other people. Because I'm from that generation, and almost every man is. Men can't cry, not allowed to show emotions, especially in public in front of other people. So I just want to honor Ben right now, just because he is an amazing, amazing pastor. He runs an amazing church with his wife, and the community that they've built. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be as strong in my faith as I am right now, because he had a lot of grace, a lot of time, and he truly believed in the model of discipleship, that just disciple one and they will go disciple many. And man, beautiful heart. So I just want to honor Ben right now, just because I haven't had that opportunity to do that. But while I was in that job, I used to listen to motivational speakers. So because when I was doing motivational speaking, I was really into motivational speaking. So I was pumping motivational speakers like Tony Robbins, um, or Bas Luhrmann. Like there's a whole list that I can't remember all of them now, because I've literally just stopped listening to any motivational speaker. But when I first came to Christianity, I typed in, I think I typed in preachers. I'm not even sure, but preachers came up, and I'd listen to them, and I almost stopped believing in Jesus because I couldn't tell the difference between a motivational speaker and a preacher. I could not tell the difference, because they were both preaching self-help. They were both like these. There was a couple of preachers that I was listening to in particular, and I don't want to name and shame them, but they were just, I can say that they were just very well-known preachers, in that when you type in preacher, they're the first guys that come up. There was two of them, and I was so confused. I was like, man, what's the difference? And I really wrestled with God, because I was like, God, how is Jesus any different from self-help? Like, am I just doing a self-help? Am I just doing this for self-help? Like, is this just all to better me? And I was really challenged by that, because the preachers I was listening to, they're all, God's going to bless you. God's going to help you. Whatever you're going through, God's going to rip you out of that circumstance. And, even though that stuff can be true, it was so confusing, because I'd just been listening to motivational speakers that are saying the same thing, just without the word Jesus. And these guys, and I could tell, one of them in particular was a trained motivational speaker. I could tell by the way he spoke, the way he walked on a platform, that he was trained. And I was like, man, like, God, like, have I just been deceived? Like, are you like, is there any real difference between the gospel and motivational speaking? And it took me a while. And yeah, thankfully for listening to Ben's teachings at the church, it really helped me with that. But I just realized that they were, I guess, preaching a self-help gospel. They weren't preaching the true gospel of Christ. They were watered down and all of that. And yeah, I just wanted to share that, because that's such a really vital bit of information, because that really made me struggle with my faith, because I was like, man, is this even real? Like, is there a difference between these two? Because they're very blurry. And then when I found true preachers, and I started listening to some like actual preachers that talk about denying self, living for Christ, obtaining godliness, denying sin, turning away from sin, declaring the victory of Christ and having an identity in Christ. And then from that identity, that will take away your old nature, your old man, to put away all those, I guess, evil desires, and then of trying to obtain and strive for godliness through the intimacy and the power of grace and love of Christ. I was like, oh, they're completely different. One's talking about dying to self, and the other one's talking about obtaining and loving self. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that because I've never shared that. And I've always wanted to, because that was a really hard thing for me to transition from, motivational speaking, self-help, and being so heavily engulfed in that, and then finding preaching and not knowing what to look up because I've never looked at preachers, and I typed in preacher and some iconic preachers come up and they're talking about the prosperity gospel and just promoting the prosperity gospel, and I was like, bro, what's the difference? So really wanted to share that, and just really want to thank everyone that's listening, and yourself, Stephen, just for the grace for listening to me and my story, and giving me the time of your day and your patience. So I just want to honor you guys and just thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. And it's been a blessing to hear it. It's been a blessing, no doubt, for the audience to hear it too. And you've got a real gift for speaking. So it's been awesome to see God redeem all of these gifts that you've had in you since you were a young child and use them for his glory. So where can people find you now? No doubt people have found your story captivating. I'm sure they want to be able to hear your music. You can send me through your links too. I'll make sure to include them in the description box. But if you could point people towards that, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, my artist name's T Cozy. I got rid of Statement just because there's too much affiliation to the old man. So made a new artist name, T Cozy. It's just real funky, real from the heart music. That'll be on Spotify, YouTube Music will be everywhere. And I've got my Instagram, T Cozy, and then it's just an underscore. That's where you can keep updated with all, I guess, my music. I haven't got anything for my ministry for like preaching or anything. I don't know. I have a conviction just to not post anything myself, and just to come onto platforms like yourself, and just to be allowed to share my heart and all of that. So if you keep on tune with T Cozy, that will be the main thing. I've got a new song coming out next month, which I'm super pumped, and it's called The Holy Ghost. So that's probably the best place to stay in tune.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much again for coming on. I'd like to encourage everyone, please go check out T Cozy on Instagram. Give him a follow over there. And please like and subscribe here. It helps get the podcast out to a lot more people. Feel free to give us a rating on Spotify if you're listening on there. Thank you guys so much for your time. And thank you, Jack, for your time, brother. You and I'll speak a little bit after this. But thanks guys for listening.